So now we're going to do the pocket. And the first thing it says is to place the interfacing the length of the pocket facing. And that's this part here and on the other side. So we're going to take our interfacing, again a 1-inch strip, and you're going to line it up and you're going to trim off the edges. And then to the other side. Okay, let's go to the pressing board or ironing board, and we're going to press that on. And this is going to then fold over where our hands are going to go in. And the reason why we want the interfacing is so that it doesn't stretch out. Really important to make sure that the bumpy side is against the wrong side of the material and that you're putting a press cloth over top because we don't want to ruin the base of our iron. And again, you're going to be pressing so that the whole thing is going to be nice and pressed. Let it cool for a second and then repeat on the other side. If it comes up a bit, you're going to need to repress that. The next thing we want to do is we want to actually fold this over, and you're going to fold it right along that line up here where we've cut that indentation, and we're going to give that just a quick press as well. So from the good side, we're going to top stitch, which is a 5/8-3. Add a 2 centimeter seam allowance. So again, we're looking on the throat plate and we're going to line it up with the 2 centimeter here with the fold line. Okay. From one side, you can start at the top and make your way down to the bottom. And the other side, you have to go from the bottom all the way up to the top. So we're going to line up our fold line right with the 2 centimeter line. And we're going to follow this fold line all the way down. So our top stitching is going to come on a diagonal and then pretty much come off of the material. So right here, our fold line is ending, but I'm still kind of keeping that fold line in the eye. And it blends off like that. So that's how the first one looks. The next one, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way to the top. So we're kind of going in a little bit blind because we're not exactly sure where that 2 centimeter is. So what I like to do is I kind of line up my fold with the 2 centimeter and work my way backwards. And now it lines up perfectly. So there's my top stitching, and that's going to keep this part in place. The next thing it says, we want to fold down the top of the pocket because this is going to get sewn on to our sweatshirt. And we're going to fold it down 2.5 centimeters. So I like to use the seam gauge, and I put it at 2.5 centimeters, and then I can fold it down. So here I'm at 2.5 centimeters, which is also 1 inch, making it a bit easier. So we're going to go to the ironing board and we're going to press that down. So I'm going to use my seam gauge as my guide. And I'm going to start on one end and then I'll work my way over. This is gonna give us a nice crease line to where we need to sew it onto our sweatshirt. Then let it sit for a minute so it can really get that crease. And now we have our folded over top. So now we're going to sew it onto our sweatshirt, but we want to make sure that the pocket is right in the center of the front. So here's our sweatshirt, and we want that pocket to be exactly down the center front. So we need to find the center front again and mark it. And this time you actually have to mark it on the good side. And that's again why I like to use the friction pens, because they will erase with the heat. Sometimes they leave a little line, but it will come out in the wash. So I'm going to take my front pieces and I'm going to fold them so that they're even. And I'm going to make a little mark. Don't go overboard and draw all the way up. And then I'm also going to make a mark just a little bit higher up as well. About the height of my pocket. Okay, so just a tiny mark. Open up your sweatshirt, not that we're going to be pinning the back to it. And now we need to find the center of our pocket. So same thing, fold it in half. Make a tiny mark. Fold this one in half and make a tiny mark down here as well. Now we want to match the center front of the sweatshirt with the center front of the pocket, both at the top and the bottom. So I'm going to line up my bottom right like that. And I'm going to line up my top right in line with this part here. Now we need to sew it on, but we're going to sew it on by flipping the pocket upwards. So very carefully, make sure your pins are with you. You're going to flip this pocket upwards, hanging on to this 2.5 centimeter mark, and you're going to pin right along that crease line that we pressed. And this time you probably just want to pin across the crease line. And now we're going to baste stitch just below that crease line. And the reason why we want to baste stitch is we want to make sure that when we flip this over, that everything lines up and that this is nice and straight and that it lines up with the bottom. Once we've discovered it's perfect, then we'll sew it again. So remember, a baste is a 5A4. Bring it to your sewing machine. So there's my crease line, and I'm going to go just below it, as straight as I can. And try to make your pins face the other way. So now I've got that sewn on with just my base stitch. I'm going to flip my pocket back over, and I want to make sure it lines up at the bottom and that it's nice and straight across. And actually, surprisingly, I did a really good job here. Now I'm going to go over it again here. I want to make sure I'm back stitching really well, because this tends to get a lot of wear and tear when we put our hands in our pocket. Stitch all the way across, and again, do a really good job back stitching over on this side. So you're going to turn to a 5A 2.5, and you're going to go directly over what you've just done. Now we've got all of this extra seam allowance here. We're gonna trim that off quite close, not super close, but close enough because this doesn't look right. And we only do that once we know it's perfect. So there we go. We need to fold the sides of our pocket in because this is a raw edge. We don't want any raw edge showing. So we're going to take this and we're going to fold this under. How much really depends on you, but I say about this much, which is about 1 centimeter. Okay, so fold it over 1 centimeter and pin that in place. We're going to press it because we want to make sure that our hand can get in there as well. And again, this one you probably have to go on up and down because there's not a lot of material. Okay, and then you want to do the same to the other side. What's important is that this area here where it ends is going to match on the other side. So now I can check. I'm going to fold one side over to the other and just check to make sure that those are even. And they look pretty good. So now I'm going to stitch along here. Some of you are saying, wow, that's really deep here, but you want to have quite a distance here. Otherwise, when you put your phone in the pocket or anything else, it's actually going to fall out. We're going to sew along here with a straight stitch, and we're going to do what's called an edge stitch, which means it's going to be really close to the edge of our fold or the edge of the material. We're going to do a straight stitch, and you're going to turn it to a 0A3. We're going to line up the center of our presser foot with the fold, and our needle is going to come really close to the edge of our fabric, right about there. So again, one of these we can start from the top, and the other one we have to start from the bottom. So I'm going to make it easy, and I'm going to start from the top first. So I'm going to line up the inside or the center of my presser foot right along that fold. Do a small back stitch. And then come all the way down. Again, keep your needle in the down position. You might have wanted to go and press this first to make it a bit easier as well. So now we've got just this nice edge stitch here, which is going to hold our fabric in place. Now I'm going to start from the bottom and head up to the top. Now our pocket is attached. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to zigzag the bottom here so that when we put the ribbing on at the end, there's not as much to line up. So we're going to do the same as what we did with the hood. We're just going to zigzag as close as we can along the bottom. So here's our pocket. It's now attached. And now we're ready for the sleeves.